What's up, everybody? Welcome to another First Impressions on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, the First Impressions podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast services. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside Mr. Assassin's Creed himself, the boss baby, Barrett Courtney.
Where did I make this joke on the other video we just recorded? Yes, I did.
For some reason, it totally cut out. So I saw you doing the crybaby going wah wah, and then it was just like choke, and then it was just more gibberish.
Oh God.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm ready to talk about some Assassin's Creed, especially after just playing what I think was 3 hours of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Like coming off of replaying most of the series so far this year. If you don't know, I've been replaying all of the Assassin's Creed games, and I started Assassin's Creed Origins, so the most recent one I actually beat was Syndicate. So I'm like in the early hours of Origins, my second playthrough, and so it was very interesting to go into Valhalla with like Odyssey in the furthest of my mind, because I feel like Odyssey is the most recent thing you can really like. Obviously, it's the most recent thing you can compare Valhalla to, but I think it's definitely the most similar to what Odyssey did, especially like I've only touched like the first couple hours of Origins, and even like going back to Origins, I was like, man, there's actually a lot missing from here that I thought was in this game, but I guess got added in Odyssey.
There is so much to talk about in all of that for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Ladies and gentlemen, just to bring you up to our weird timeline, Barrett and I played we said 3 hours of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It all went by in a blur for me. A little bit more, a little bit less. However, we played it before Ubisoft Forward. We're recording this before Ubisoft Forward, but it will post after Ubisoft Forward. So not sure what exactly they showed you, not sure what exactly they announced outside of what we played. So if there's any breaking news or anything like that, you need to click over and check the post-show Gamescast or our watch along, both on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. But Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Barrett, so you're playing through them all again. You're doing all this stuff. I think most people who watch Kind of Funny content know that I fell head over heels in love with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Loved Cassandra, loved the story, and put like 130 hours into it, right? And I've since then obviously been juiced for another Assassin's Creed, and specifically when they showed Valhalla, I thought from the trailers we had seen, a little bit of gameplay we had seen, that this looks right up my alley. And man, getting into it and starting, it totally is up my alley, but I'm surprised how much they listened to the feedback of what people loved and people didn't love about Odyssey and implemented it here. Because for me, the first thing, especially coming off of, a bunch of open world games lately, the thing that spoke to me right off the bat was I thought something was wrong with my demo, because I was like opening the map and going to the markers and nothing was popping up over them. Right? I don't know how much you got into this or how much this spoke to you as not being your normal open world stuff. Like on the map, you'll go in and there's like little blue squares. There's blue symbols indicating a more major mission, but that's it. There's no information about what you're doing. And so you click on it, and I would go in there and you'd get there, and it wasn't the pillar of light right above this character, talk to this character. Like, a very simple one was I went over there and there was this little girl on the shore acting like she was summoning horses. And it was like, okay. And you went up and you talked to her for a little bit, and then it ended. And again, there was no thing up here going, hey, go here, do this, do that. It popped up, and I looked across the river and there was a horse. So I went over, got the horse, brought it back, and she's like, you got my, this is exactly what I want. And it was like a joke quest or whatever. And it popped up and gave me the mission title as I completed it.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And I was like, oh
God, that's so interesting. Because like the thing that I immediately turned off in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, now that I'm remembering it, is that like there was implemented in Assassin's Creed Odyssey specifically, was finding missions and next
exploration mode.
Yeah, exploration mode, which I did not really love. So I just brought it back to the old school. Like, all right, here are all the check marks and stuff like that. And that's something like I didn't even really notice what was happening. That it feels. The exploration mode in Odyssey, to give context of like what it felt like to navigate this world in Valhalla in this demo, like exploration mode in Odyssey felt like the major extreme that for me at least felt like very like, whoa, like there's a lot going on here, and it almost felt like they were trying too hard to make it feel natural, whereas exploring Valhalla and just the little things of, like you were saying, like they don't tell you what these like little blue or orange squares are on the map. They just are like, hey, this might be a point of interest, maybe you want to go to it, maybe you don't. It felt more natural, you know.
So the thing popping up there, right, it was either gold, blue, or white, these icons. Gold meant wealth, blue meant mystery, white meant secret. And that's it. That's what you know. And there's little things filled in because you're, of course, building out your community. So the wealth you get fills in a meter down at the bottom. But like, it wasn't beating you over the head that this is what this mission was going to be. There was another one where I walked in. I followed the blue thing out, which meant, mystery, right? Yeah. And I got there and there was a nun praying or whatever. And I started talking to her.
Oh my God. And then she's like, she's a boss fight.
And she's like, yeah, well, fuck you. I was like, what the fuck? She turned around, we started fighting. I'm fighting this nun. I'm like, in a church. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I didn't see that coming. And granted, I'm sure 20 hours into Valhalla, you'll understand what you're getting into. But for somebody who, again, it's been like spelled out what's going to happen and where this is going to go, I wasn't prepared for that. And I was like, that's awesome. And that's really cool. Again, I played Odyssey the entire way exploration mode, which is, if you didn't play that way and it was more like, you'd go get the quest and it'd be like, all right, well, over, north of whatever monument and south in here. And it was like, it wasn't like, where the fuck are you going? But it narrowed it down. Whereas this one is somewhere between, because it is go here, there's something there, but you get there not knowing what it is, what quest you're about to get, what kind of thing you're about to get out of it, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah.
I thought the game, beautiful. You know what I mean? Again, for full disclosure, of course, there's a pandemic, if you didn't know. And so we were work from home. We played it through a thing called Parsec where, a computer somewhere else was streaming it to us and we played it that way. So obviously there's a dip in the actual fidelity of the content. But even with whatever, playing off a PC to my PC, it still looked gorgeous, I thought. I thought the environment detail was really good. I thought the environments were varied, which is really good. Yep. I love Odyssey, like I've said, and I will continue to say, I'm sure, 17 more times in this. But Odyssey, for the most part, right, was here is this beautifully sun-bathed land of Greece, and it was like, okay, cool, and like I feel like every environment one to the next felt the same and looked the same, and it was gorgeous, sure, but at some point it's sand and olive trees. I got it. Whereas this one, I thought there were, riding across these plains, not suddenly, but you'd go into and it would be a layer of fog. You know what I mean? I don't know if you got there. My demoist was helping me explore some stuff, and I went off over here and it got into a cursed section. And when you got in there, it was like fucking Blair Witch, black and white, fucking birds flying around, terrifying. I was like, what the fuck?
Whoa, wait, so, because I got to something similar where there was like a random like big, it was kind of like a boss fight, and it was like this big presentation where we went to this dude who was kind of like hung up, and we're like, oh, what's happening here? And we turn around and there's like this kind of like witch demon worshiper or something like that, and it like turned into this whole boss fight. But it felt like
now I know what you're talking about, where like you did the boss fight right in like the second phase of that, like she had like a fire ghost that would follow behind her, right?
Yeah, or like in the first phase, she would like throw like weird copies of herself at you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That wasn't the same thing.
But it's similar though, of like just like the amount of like varied, like you get these like beautiful plains and like it's like regular like we're being a Viking, and then you get like these really creepy, fucked up environments that made it feel like, whoa, like this land that we're exploring here feels very it feels alive because of all of the different environments that we're discovering in our playthrough.
I think another big change, right, is that they took a bunch of the stuff that you would have had on your normal eagle in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now it's a different bird. I forget which one. Hawk.
It's a raven.
It's just an eagle again. Raven. Yeah. You still can use that for an aerial view, but now you have your Odin sight where you click in the stick, right, and send out like a pulse wave to put everything in blue. A lot more of that is there now. So that's what marks enemies. That's what's pointing out things that are of interest in it.
Yeah.
It felt like that again. Like it's these little changes where, since they came back with Origins and then took the year off from Odyssey, there's been the conversation of like, they aren't trying to shit out Assassin's Creeds anymore and just put them out year after year after year after year. So like they are making these changes that are making them feel different.
And they're trying to be mindful of like what makes a better experience. And it felt like they were stick with me here. It felt like when like when Bob Dylan went electric and people were like, what the fuck is this shit? we hate
I
you,
don't,
Bob
but
Dylan,
I understand.
Because he was this like folk blues singer, and then like he did a couple of electric albums, and then Blonde on Blonde was like a good like combination of like electric and his folk stuff. This feels like Assassin's Creed doing that, where like the Origins and Odyssey stuff was like, let's make it like this huge open world, and like it's gonna have still some like Assassin's vibe, but it's gonna kind of be a different experience. And people are like, whoa, like a lot of people were like, whoa, what the fuck is this? And then Valhalla kind of now feels like a good melding of the two, where I feel like out of the three new era games, and granted, like Odyssey is a little in my mind. It's been a couple of years, and Origins I've only replayed like the first few hours. This has weirdly felt like the most Assassin's Creed game in the modern iterations of like I don't know really what it was about it, but yeah, like just the simple switch of not tagging things with your bird, but being able to do essentially like the view thing that you could do in old Assassin's Creed. It's a little toned down in this, but yeah, being able to hold like one of your sticks and being able to like kind of like tagging enemies and seeing them through walls and stuff like that. And like the stealth kind of portions of like taking down enemy camps felt a little more at home with like what I've like remembered with like older Assassin's Creed and playing them like a little more recently than like Origins or Odyssey felt like, if that makes any sense. I don't know if like I'm off base there, but like at least for me it was like, oh, this feels like a cool melding between like old school Assassin's Creed and the new open Assassin's Creeds that we've gotten.
Yeah, it's interesting because I want more time with it, obviously, but like they even just changed the camera angle enough, right? In terms of where it is when you're fighting, that it feels a bit more wide and there's more people coming at you and they're attacking out of sync, which as somebody who, you know, again, like 130 hours of Cassandra where I'm just dodging around your back every time and slashing you with poison, I was eating shit left and right in this demo. Like I have to, and now part of that, of course, I guess promotion for us. Remember, our Ghost of Tsushima review pops Tuesday, and I've been playing a bunch of that or whatever. And like, obviously, I don't think I'm going too far since you've all seen the Ghost of Tsushima demo that it plays a lot like Assassin's Creed, but the buttons are different. So I was like eating shit for a number of reasons I feel in this demo. But, you know, having the shield, having an axe, that was my thing, my weapons loadout. And you could switch them by double tapping and like the A button tossing between each other. That
threw me off because I didn't realize that, and I accidentally hit double A, and I was like, wait, why? Where's my axe?
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I not hitting?
I was doing the same thing where I was in a fight for forever, hitting people with the shield before I was like, oh fuck, I switched these things around. I need to do it because of course your left is on your left bumper, your right is on your right bumper, and obviously your main weapon has the R2 as well for a heavy hit or whatever. But yeah, like there's enough in there that I was playing it, and I know it's Assassin's Creed, and you see it's Assassin's Creed, but it doesn't feel like Assassin's Creed. Like it reminded me so much of the payoff, and this is such a stretch. Stick with me, I'm old. But what was it? 2000? We were at the old IGN office, 2008, 2009. I remember there being a 360 PS3 Viking game that we were all excited for and came out and it was like, oh, it's all right. This feels like the payoff of that, where this feels like a Viking RPG, like for real, like going through, talking to these enemies, fighting the enemies, talking to your people, and we'll get into some of the relationship stuff. But, you know, your ability points are going into this star chart now where you have
is so I didn't realize I didn't realize you could zoom in on it, and when I was going
me neither, dude.
I was like, why am I not unlocking this ability point? Like, why
did they come over the comm and tell you?
No, I figured it out eventually, and then I
saw me struggling because sorry, go ahead.
No, it was
you have your center thing, and then you have what is it? It's yellow, red, and white. There's another one for I invested all my stuff into red, which was like the bear tree, and like I'm going through, and so I'm investing the points, and you have stat nodes, which are like your passive stuff, and your main skills, which are your main moves or whatever. And I was going through and putting it in, and I was like trying to advance the next one. I couldn't figure out. He's like, they came over the mic. He's like, you can zoom in. And I was like, oh shit. And you go in and it's like suddenly, do you want it to be more melee damage? Do you want it to be more, have more, another adrenaline slot, which is like, your special moves
or like your stealth damage and stuff like bow and arrow damage and stuff like that. And there was like so in depth. And I remember I really went into it when that random mystical boss that I was talking about earlier, I kept getting my ass handed to me over and over and over again. And I was like collecting like the health system. I really want to shout out because it's interesting, and I don't know if it worked the same in Odyssey. I don't quite remember, but like you collect, you just like collect like berries and shit to like fill up your health, and then you can collect, I think, like specific vegetation to like have in a bag or something that you can have on hand to immediately heal.
So I'll stop you there and explain it, because that was my thing too. Because like, you know, Odyssey, I had an ability assigned to my wheel or to my specials that I could just heal on command in a battle if I needed to for a little bit, and you know, burn your adrenaline there, whatever they call it in Odyssey, I forget now. But then after a fight, you just like filled back in and you were normal. This one, it is not that way at all, and so it is that you have a health bar and then a little reticule next to it that has a number in it, and so the idea is that when you walk around now, you're picking up plants just like you would in Odyssey, but if you're hurt, you'll eat it immediately. That'll fill in your bar. When your bar is full and you pick it up, it goes into the bag and fills in a separate circle. And when the circle fills, that becomes a ration that's in there. And then you can also just pick up rations as you go too. But I was getting my ass handed to me and grinding against this boss. I'm like, what do I need to do to heal? And he's like, run around, you moron. Because there was flowers and things to eat in the fight. And then there's also ones that refill your adrenaline too. Like, cause there's different ways to get it, but like you can pick up different plants to do that, to fill that in.
And it was like, it was so satisfying. And this is like one of the things where while playing it, I was like, yeah, this is like more Assassin's Creed. It feels like a cool combination of modern and bringing back a little bit of the old school stuff to make it feel a little more Assassin's Creed again. And then finding that, like, I know it's a tired comparison, that kind of Dark Souls kind of fight, right? Where it's super tough. You have to think about everything you've learned so far. And it was so satisfying to like be killed over and over again, like to the point where it was like 4 times, and I was like 30 minutes left in the demo. I was like, all right, the only thing I like want to do is beat this fucking boss. And so like I would go around, like I went into my skill tree, updated everything like as much as I could there in like damage and stuff like that, and like got as many rations around the area as I could, collected a bunch of bow and arrows, played it a couple of times again to learn of like, okay, like how quick does she send like her ghost versions of her? Like, can I shoot an arrow at her before she attacks me with that so I don't get fucked up by that? And it was just the most like, fuck yes, when I finally beat her at the end. And even my demoist was like, that was so cool to watch, of like be going through the motions and figuring it all out and having it come together after spending like a good like 45 minutes trying to figure out of like, how the fuck do I beat this one enemy? And
did you run into the fisherman boss?
No.
So there's a dude I ran across who I guess is another Viking kind of dude, and he was talking to his son about how he's like, I think on his way out kind of thing, and I interrupted and started talking to him, and he's like, basically, I don't want to die old in my bed, so like we should fight right now. And I was just he was one-shotting me, and I was going over and over and over and over, and finally I was like, fuck it, and I ran off, and the demoer was like, came over the mic and just like, just so you know, that's like a legendary boss. So I'm like, God damn it! Like, why were you letting me fight this? Like an hour and a half into the game, I didn't know what the hell was going on.
That's hilarious. And to talk a little bit more about like, I feel like what we'll see more of in the game rather than just boss fights is like taking down enemy camps, some of the story mode missions and stuff like that.
The raids.
The raids, which like I forget, like one of the story missions that we went through, was that like a raid in of itself, or like you're sailing your boat in, like there's like
you blow your horn.
Yeah. And so,
no, that was just a straight up story thing. Of I know what you're talking about, where it's like the guy was talking about how I had a nightmare of like lightning and like our boat's burning or whatever, and she's like, shut the fuck up, and you come in on the phone.
And so like it was interesting going through that, because I thought that was like a story mission raid. Maybe I probably read that wrong, but it was like interesting going throughout that castle and like helping your men like push like the I forget,
the battering ram.
Yeah, like the ram to get through doors and stuff like that, and I felt overwhelmed.
Totally.
And again, it's because like I've been more attuned with older Assassin's Creed games recently, so it's like, oh god, there's like people like shooting arrows at me, like while there's also like 10 dudes like surrounding me and my men. Like it felt like a lot, and I was definitely like, I was getting a little frustrated, but I imagine like once you come into that spot like a little more naturally in the game, like you're gonna pick up like way more.
So to full time out right there if we can, because I'd like to jump off that. Like that would be another thing. Again, I'm gonna play the shit out of this game. I can't wait for it. We're getting dropped in halfway through the game, and I was right there with you. That with that raid, so like there's multiple planes of action. So you're fighting the people on the ground. Your guys have the battering ram that you have to go help them with. But above the battering ram, somebody's pouring like the hot oil down. So you have to blow up these things to blow them up. Then there's archers on the ridges. And it was that thing of,
it was a lot.
Keep in mind that I'm still terrible at the hand-to-hand combat because it's not Odyssey. And you know what I mean? So it was so different of trying to get the rhythm down and when to go. And so I advanced up, and it was like 3 or 4 different sections. And I got to the third of 4, I think it was. And I might be kind of making that up, but it was something like that, third of 4. And they introduced these berserker dudes who just fucking came at me, and I'm out of health, and I died, and it started me all the way back.
Yeah,
and I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
I wonder if it's tied to difficulty or something, but yeah, I thought specifically for that mission, it was like the checkpoint system was not great.
And then I got to the very end where it was just like, kill this dude, but it was the same thing, or I'm on my last legs and a berserker, and I died again. I was like all the way back, like, motherfucker.
Oh,
are you kidding me?
So here's an interesting thing. So at the end of that mission, right, and like I just want to talk about it a little bit here. Of so at the end, future Barrett, we might need to cut this out. I was about to lead into something I think we're not allowed to talk about, so never mind.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. So where do you want to pick that
Future
up?
Barrett's safe. Everything's fine. No, it's fine because just leave it. You can leave it right there.
Okay,
Hey, there's embargoes and stuff. We don't want to ruin the game for you. No, like that was right there where I was like, in terms of cons, I was like, this checkpoint system sucks. And I don't fault the gameplay because, again, I'm dropped in there with a million different moves that I don't even know what they are yet.
There's a huge learning curve being dropped.
Right, and you have two, similar to Odyssey, you have the 2 sets of face button commands. So like I was learning those, and then you have them for arrows too. So you have them for hand to hand, you have them for arrows. And I wrote it down. That's a book of knowledge abilities.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you looked into this. Like the way it works is, no longer are you getting the points there to invest in those face button commands. You're finding the book of knowledge, which then unlocks those for you. And you can find a second or third, depending on what they are, to upgrade them and level them up.
And these books of knowledge you can find throughout the world with like the little dots that like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like I went to like a random farmhouse that was being like raided by some dudes, and I took them all out, and then like went down into like this little like hidden cellar or whatever, and there was like a book of knowledge there and stuff. So that's like kind of an
I went down a well or something and found
them. Like that's encouragement for you to go out and explore these little, for lack of a better word, like question marks throughout the world, right?
Sure. And like, I think, in this exploration way, we had been introduced to the raid mechanic through the boat. You have your Viking boat here, which is not nearly as big, and maybe later it will be, but where we were playing, not nearly as big as Cassandra's boat, right? It is like a long rowboat, like a dozen, maybe more guys on it, all lining it where they row. You hang on the back with your horn when you blow.
Yeah, for people who, like, really quick, because I know, like, people are like, man, I'm sick of the ship combat. Like, we need to get away from that. Like, I don't think we're really getting ship combat in the way that you think from, like, I forget how intense it was in Odyssey. We got a little bit of it in Origins, and like,
it was intense in Odyssey. You had bows and fire shields.
Like really what we know from like Black Flag and stuff. Like I don't think we're really getting that. It's just like another way to explore and get around the map.
And so I did one mission that's not the one we were talking about earlier, but another raid. And then later on, I just was wandering, found a town, went in there, and as I was entering, he's like, first off, now you can, I think, I should have written it down, but I think it's R1. It's one of the shoulder buttons. Maybe actually it might be hold up on the D-pad, left on the D-pad, but you now have a wheel of options, which is like you have torch, you have the ability to put on your cloak, which disguises you so you can walk through it, and that people aren't like, oh shit, there's a fucking Viking here.
Yeah.
So I put on the cloak, walked into town, and then brought up the same wheel, blew my horn, which started a raid on that town. And I was like, oh, it's like every other open world game. We're going to raid this place, take it over, check mark, we did it, right? And it wasn't. It was that we raided, and we literally raided and pillaged the place.
Yeah.
We ran around, we're opening up giant chests, and it's filling in like what we're sending back to our town or whatever, and then we bugged out, and it was like still their town. I was like, oh, fuck, okay.
Yeah, that was really,
to my knowledge.
That was really interesting the way I did that, where I didn't realize that was a place that you could raid, and so I took out that entire town stealthily as I could, and then when I got to these chests, I was like, oh, you need to raid to be able to get to these chests. I was like, oh, shit. And then I went to the entrance of the town, blew my horn, and then like all the enemies were still taken out, and then like my guys just helped me open these chests. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that you can just call your boys and like fuck up the entire town and all that, but like also still do it in a stealthy way that you would want. So I thought that was really interesting, where I realized I was like, oh, I kind of fucked that up, but in a cool way.
I felt the combat, like I said, I need to get used to. And
Yeah.
I need the tutorials. I think that would have been helpful if they would have started us where you basically start and figure out all that. But one of the things that I felt a con or whatever you want to call it, I don't know if you felt this way, Barrett. I felt Eivor was way stickier. Like there was times where I was running around in like, a pole you should easily go around. I'd hit and like, oh shit. And I have to like back myself out of and move around that way and stuff like that. A weird thing to put out there, but one of the few things I thought in this game that was breaking my immersion.
Yeah, I didn't really notice that too much. So yeah, that wasn't a huge standout to me. You know, it was a slight disappointment to me, Greg.
What's that?
These rap battles that we were talking about. These rap battles that we found out. So
I loved it.
So we found, because it ended up being a little more basic than I wanted it to be. Like I wanted it to kind of be
maybe
like
that's the first one. Maybe it gets crazy.
Maybe
it's literally the introduction where he's like, "You suck at this. You're not going to be good at this."
Oh, so like I actually nailed mine. So like,
but in the beginning, right? He's like, "You're terrible." I think I did fuck it up at one point, and he was like, "Man, you are bad at this."
And so like,
explain the system.
So like, it's essentially the rap battle is essentially, all right, you're shit talking to each other and you need to come back at the person who's shit talking to you with a rhyme. And so it again, because it might be the first one, who knows, it felt very simple of like, all right, he ended with like the word small, whatever, and then like you'd find the one, like you'd be given 3 options, and then there'd be one line that like one of them would be like zing, one of them would end with butts, and then one of them would end with ball, and you're like, okay, the one that ends with ball. Like it felt very
there was
like
one
simple.
That I fucked up because there was like
cute.
Small and ball.
Yeah. It was cute, but it was like, man, I wanted this to be a little more, I don't know, like intense, like back and forth. But again, like that might have been the first one, and like we get that expanded upon. The one mini game that I did really like was the drinking mini game. Holy shit,
yes,
that was so fun. Of like you're trying to take down as much as you can, and at one point, because you're so drunk, you're starting to like tilt back and forth, and that was like a very intense. Like again, it's not like, I don't know if it's like adding to the quality of the gameplay, but it's something little that adds to the world and like being a part of the world. And I really enjoyed it. That was really fun and cute.
So yeah, the section there is where you go to a party, right? Eivor goes to a party, and before you advance the thing, there's a bunch of mini games and conversations to have. And for me, that was what, I don't even know, and 2 hours into the demo, or an hour and a half. It was deep into the demo, and it was the first time I think I really got to see Eivor as a character, and that's where I was like, I'm all in. This is what it's about. Because like I played, I don't know if it's a final thing. The demo or IS didn't know either. You can switch between, in our demo, you could switch between male and female Eivor with the Animus menu.
Oh, interesting.
Don't know if that'll be a final option in the game or not, but I was able to go back and forth. I started as female Eivor, did a bit as male Eivor, and then did not, like, no offense to the voice actor, that's not what I envisioned that character sounding like. So I went back to female Eivor, and getting to run around that thing, do the drinking mini game, right, where you got to hit the button as it goes, and you're trying to outdrink another Viking. And then there was one of smashing pots, but you were already drunk. And then if you want it, I don't know if you did it, of course, I fucked this guy. I got the option to have some hot Viking sex. I was all about it.
I turned him down. I was like, you should go drink more. I'm gonna chill over here.
I did it, and then just to rub salt in the wound at the end, I called him his brother's name when that option popped up, and he got super pissed. And I was like, fuck yes, like this is what I want. And again, where I feel this game is obviously Assassin's Creed, but it feels so much more like a Viking RPG that I'm all about, where it is make these decisions, do these things. You can already see the relationship she's has. You can already see the way people talk about her. They call her wolf-kissed. I asked, like, because again, we haven't seen the presentation. I was like, is that because she has the scar on her face? She has something on her neck too. Did she get mauled by a wolf? And he's like, everything that's out is out that we can say. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to bother right now giving you harassment for it. But yeah, the drinking challenges were great. I loved, we talking about things we love. The soundtrack is great. This whole vocalization, old school instrument thing. I loved, I don't know if you caught it when you were in your boat, you can make them sing, and then you can also change the song now, like it's radio. So you can like request a new song or whatever.
And that's like an awesome like little addition, because like obviously the shanties are one of the best parts of Black Flag. So I love that they kind of continue that tradition of being like singing when you're sailing around on your boat. And I did love that they added that, because I remember in my recent playthrough of Black Flag, I was like, man, they're like singing this one, like I've collected a few shanties, and they're singing like this one song over and over again. I wish I could skip this one. So that, I did catch that, and that was really cool.
And then I don't know what this is. I couldn't find it. I don't know if and I forget at this point. It might have been the rap battle, but it might have been something else. I saw my charisma leveled up. Did this happen for you?
Yeah, that was after the rap battle.
Did you see where that goes though? Because I went in all the menus and couldn't find it. I didn't have. I was running out of time, so I didn't even bother asking.
I didn't do a lot of exploration with that, but I imagine that's got to be tied into like what dialogue options.
Yeah. And so that was cool. I went off and ran and did. Did you do the mini game where you build the Karens? Where you take the rocks and pile them up.
I think I was trying to find that, but then I ran into something. Like I ran into a different like. And again, this is like a, kind of like how alive this world feels, which I do really love. Like I was trying to find that mission, but then I ran into this other like side mission where these two kids like pocketed my money, and then I like went to like go find them.
Yeah, I know I did that one.
Yeah, and I was kind of like giving them shit like back and forth, but then I like let them keep some of the money, and they were cool. And they're like, "All right, you're part of like our crew now." It's like, "All right, cool." Yeah. Like it's just like little things like that. I was like, "All right, this is adorable." I love that we're getting little things like that to build out our version of what was the main character's name? I keep blanking. Eivor. Like building our version of Eivor, I think is really really cool.
Yeah, and so I mean I think obviously coming off of Odyssey, if they were going to do something more like that, I was going to love it. From what I played, I loved it. Yeah. I need to learn the combat in a different way because it's just not what I was expecting. Still got through it, obviously. The stickiness was an interesting thing for me. Obviously not a thing for Barrett. And then like personally, I think it's going to be, and I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't an option in there to turn off what their version of exploration mode is. Personally, that gets me super stoked. I hate it when I'm playing a game, and this includes Odyssey at points, where it is just wash and repeat, where it is the text is all on the screen. I run the character to the thing, and I know what's going to happen. So I look at my phone, and then that ends, and I get off my phone, and I run and I kill the person. Like I like going in and not knowing what this mission's about to be. So for me personally, Valhalla really high right now on the hype list. Like it looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. And like the one thing, and this was always my thing about Odyssey, where I really liked it, but I wasn't as in love with it as you were, Greg. Odyssey felt like way too big. And looking at the map, I think at first, like the first thing I did, I went into my demo, looked at like what was available for us, and then zoomed all the way out. And it felt daunting at first. I was like, oh fuck, this is gonna be really, really big. But then like exploring, like going back and forth between places in our area of the map didn't feel too bad. It was like, oh, this is actually kind of a quick trip. So I think
even when I saw stuff and I was like, I gotta get in the boat and get on the stream, I was like, this seems far. It was over like that.
So like I think looking at like whenever y'all see that, like when you guys get to play this game, you might be like, oh, I'm like worried about how big this is going to be. I don't think it's going to be near Odyssey level. I would probably put it somewhere along the line of like Origins, maybe. Because that's been a big concern for me. I was like, fuck, I don't want this to be like another 80-hour experience where like I'm constantly going back and forth between these places that like have so much distance in between them. The map looks like it's big, but again, with like our section, which was looked like a pretty sizable section of the map as a whole, wasn't too bad. So
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, what did you think of Assassin's Creed Valhalla? Based on what we said, what you saw at Ubisoft Forward, let us know in the comments. Of course, we'll continue to cover it on the road to launch. Remember, we are Kinda Funny Games. You can find us at youtube.com/kindafunnygames podcast services around the globe. Multiple shows each and every day, each and every week. So much to see, so much to do. Barrett, thank you for your Assassin's Creed expertise.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to serve you.